there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I have a project that I'm going to make for my auntie, and she is a nurse and she has a colleague of hers who is also a nurse who is retiring. So I am making a card from scratch today for her. Now I have folded a piece of copy paper, like computer paper, just really thin paper, folded it in half so that I can get a nice symmetrical shape, and I have kind of drawn half of a shirt. I am going to do the top half of some scrubs as my card today. So I roughly got the outline sorted just with a pencil. It doesn't have to be perfect because this is just an outline to trace over. And then once I have the shape that I need, I am tracing it onto some 110 pound Nina Solar white paper, which is a really nice heavy cardstock. And I want it to be a nice heavy cardstock because this is the card base and the card is going to be opened and closed and opened and closed. And I need it to be nice and sturdy, particularly because it is a big card. Now she wanted a nice big card because there are going to be lots of people signing it, obviously. So you could make this to any size that you wanted at all. I am just rounding the corners with my scissors, but again, if you have a corner rounder, you can use that. And I cut out two of these shapes. Now I did not cut the front V out of the back one because obviously that's the back of the scrubs. Now here I'm going to make a stethoscope, so I am going to draw one. I just googled a picture and I'm doing my best to draw one. I'm sure that if there are any nurses out there, you are cringing at my interpretation, but for those of us who are not in the medical field at all, this was the best that I could do. So I drew one which was far too big, and then I was kind of having trouble getting the sizing right, so I kind of put it on top of my little scrubs outline there so that I could get a better idea of how big I needed this to be. So I just have a rough outline again, and then I will fussy cut this out with some Cutter Bee scissors, which have a really nice fine sharp point at the end for doing all of the little fussy cutting. And there is one end of my stethoscope, and then I just need to make the two little pieces that would go in your ears. Now I chose to use white cardstock for all of this. You could definitely use coloured cardstock right from the get-go, some black cardstock and things, but for me I just found it easier because I was sketching it all out with a pencil to do it on white cardstock and then colour it as need be. So that was fine for me, but whatever works well for you. I've got the other end of my stethoscope here, and I've just kind of made the top a little bit wiggly so it looks like it's coming around the person's shoulders, and then it will come to colouring all of these in. So I'm keeping this super nice and simple. I'm using some black Soot Distress Oxide ink, but any black ink would work really well. You could even just colour this in with a black pen or black marker. That would work fine. I'm colouring in those two little pieces that will go on the end of the stethoscope as well. And then the little rectangle there is actually going to be a pocket for the scrubs. Now, where I live at the hospital, the scrubs are kind of a darkish blue colour for nurses and things, so I was trying to kind of get a similar colour to that. Now I'm using Salty Ocean as a base colour and then adding chipped sapphire to the edges to give it a little bit of dimension and not make it quite as flat, and that colour is not too far away in my opinion from what I remember seeing the colour of their scrubs. So I'm going to do the same thing for the front of the card. I am being a little bit careful to keep the card in the same spot on the scrap paper because I don't want any of the ink to go on to the back of it. So you could tape it down, but I felt that I could probably be careful enough to keep it in one place. So I'm adding a base color again of all of that Salty Ocean, and it doesn't matter that it's a little bit blotchy. I think my ink pad might be a little bit dry as well. I probably need to re-ink it up. And then around the sides and kind of a nice even coating of chipped sapphire to go over the top. Again, you could definitely use coloured cardstock for this and then maybe even add a little bit of inking to the edges. But for me, it was just as easy to create the colour from scratch. I don't keep much coloured cardstock on hand, and certainly not this size of it. So it was easy enough for me to ink up a card this size. So what I did do, I coloured the stethoscope and things black with the black soot. I'm going to add some heat embossing, some silver embossing powder to those, so I wanted them to dry a little bit. For the one on the left here, I am just putting a little piece of mint tape, which is some really nice low-tech tape, just because that's where I want the heat embossing to start. And then for the other side, I'm going to use some little anti-static powder pouch, which is really important when I don't want the embossing powder to stick everywhere. So I'm just using an embossing pen, which I will link everything down below that I used in this video, in case you are interested, and then some silver embossing powder on top. And this is, I guess, to kind of look a little bit like metal, but it doesn't have to look exactly right. I think people get the gist of it when they look at the card. Hopefully they can see what the intention was, even if things aren't perfect. So that was my goal anyway. It's a nice big card for everybody to write in for this lady who is retiring. So I'm going to add on those two little pieces onto the end of my stethoscope, and that pretty much completes those. They're really nice and simple. There are lots of other things I could have done. I could have added some glossy accents and things to make them a little bit more 3D-ish, but I felt okay as is. Now here is the pocket. I want to put something in the pocket, so I want to make it pop up. I have a little piece of 3mm foam here, and I'm just going to kind of cut it to a little bit smaller than the size of the pocket, and then I will cut a sort of U shape out, and this will just mean that I can put things in. You could use some layered pieces of cardstock as well, that would work fine. I didn't want people to be able to see the white foam from the side. Now this is how I am going to conquer that, by going around it with a marker pen. You can definitely skip this step if it doesn't bother you that you can see the white from the sides, or you would use some foam. If you have some foam that is a similar color, that would be another good option as well. I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue because I know it is nice and strong and it's not going to come apart once it is all dry, to pop that on the back. And then just as a couple of little details, I didn't want this card to be super detailed and super overwhelming. I felt like just the card itself was kind of cool enough, having a shaped card, but I am going to go around the edge with some white detailed stitching. Now this is something I haven't done on a card for a fair while. It used to be really popular in card making, but I felt like this was the perfect card to add a little bit of stitching. Again, just those couple of extra finer details. I'm going to do it on the pocket as well, and then add a couple of little layers of stitching across the front of the pocket. Again, this is completely optional too. Now I know that this card is kind of specific in that I'm making it for a nurse's outfit. However, I wasn't going to post this one at all, but I was reminded that there are a lot of amazing medical staff who have had a really tough year, and that a nurse's card might be something fun that people would search and want to make. So this is just my version of it, and I hope that you enjoy it and take it for what it is. It's not meant to be too serious, and I hope that people just gain pleasure out of seeing this, as I hope does the recipient of this card. So I am popping some glue onto the back of the pocket there, and then I've got my little stethoscope up there. I will cut off those pieces when they are dry. Now this is how I'm going to make the back of the card. I'm going to put a score line around 1 centimeter, or around 3/8 of an inch just down, enough so that I can add a little bit of double-sided tape. Make sure that it's a really nice strong adhesive, because this card is going to be open and closed a lot of times. I'll round it off so that the adhesive is right to the edges. Now I definitely think that this card could be used for lots of different occasions and different sentiments on it, but as I said, this one was a happy retirement one, so I have a stamp set here that I'm going to stamp in it before I close up the card. So I am just going to stamp it in some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a really nice pigment ink that stamps fine detail really, really well. And then all I need to do is put the card together. So I have the two parts ready to go, the front and the back, and the adhesive up the top, which will become the hinge for the card. Now I did want something nice and little and kind of simple that would go in the pocket. So off camera I did put together a tiny little pair of scissors that will kind of sit halfway in the pocket, and they will come out in and out, kind of be free to sit there just as a little bit of almost an interactive element. But aside from that, this card is pretty much finished. I did go ahead and make a custom envelope for this as well, because it is a really big card, and I didn't use the envelope maker at all. I just freehanded it and made an envelope that would fit this card. And because we used nice heavy cardstock as the base, it stands up really nicely, which is also important. And that is pretty much my card for today. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed this video and I hope that you got something out of it. Please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think of this a little bit different card for me. Thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye!